In this video, we finish up the first group of those fallacies of presumption, the fallacies of presupposition, with a look at two more fallacies called the fallacy of composition and the fallacy of division. Now, the fallacy of composition involves an assumption that the whole will be like all of its parts. And I underline the word whole there, and you're going to want to do the same because we're going to contrast that in a moment with the fallacy of division. So composition is the assumption that the whole will be like all of its parts. So for example, you may be somebody who says, wow, I love violin music. I think a solo violinist is just fantastic. And if one violinist is good, two must be better. Well, that may be true, as in this example. But then again, it may not, right? Just because one violin may sound good, that alone doesn't automatically mean that two violins will be better, as in this case. Now, I'll give you a personal example of the fallacy of composition. Years ago, my students knew that I really enjoyed bacon. And so for a while, my students were giving me all these bacon products. I got a bendable Mr. Bacon. I got a little plush strip of bacon to hang off my keychain. Bacon Band-Aids. It was crazy. And one day they came in and somebody brought me some bacon salt. Now I was thinking, okay, bacon salt, that'd be good because that's bacon. Ice cream, I really like ice cream. So surely bacon salt on ice cream would be even better. Now my students said, Mr. Perkins, I don't think that's a good idea. They already saw through the fallacy of composition there. Well, when I went home that night, I got a big scoop of ice cream, put it in the bowl, sprinkled some bacon salt on top of that ice cream, and guess what? It was disgusting. So once again, just because something may be good in terms of the individual parts, that doesn't mean that the whole is necessarily going to be the same. Now, as you may imagine, the fallacy of division is exactly the opposite, and that's where we're going next. The fallacy of division involves an assumption that the parts will be like the whole. And again, we've underlined the word parts because that's the area of focus. It's when we think that the individual parts will be like the whole. And for this, we want to introduce you to a couple of ancient philosophers. There's the Greek Anaxagoras, who lived from around 500 to around 428 BC. And then the Roman philosopher and poet, Lucretius, who lived about 100 to 55 BC and who wrote this work in Latin called De Rerum Natura, or On the Nature of Things. And in that, he talked about something that Anaxagoras had said. And there's a word here, homeomereia, that we're going to talk about. You see it in the middle of your slide there. So Lucretius writes, now let us look into this theory of Anaxagoras, which the Greeks call homeomereia. Understand that in the speaking of homeomereia of things, Anaxagoras means that bones are formed of minute miniature bones, flesh of minute miniature morsels of flesh, blood by the coalescence of many drops of blood, gold consists of grains of gold, earth is a conglomeration of little earths, fire of fires, moisture of moistures, and he pictures everything else as formed in the same way. Now, I think we know, and I think you know, certainly from science, that hair is not just made of smaller bits of hair. Right? Blood is not just made of smaller bits of blood. There are actually fundamentally different pieces or particles that make up those larger things. And so we want to be careful that we don't look at the whole and assume that the parts are just the same. Let's take another look, or take a look at another example of that. So here we see the woman in gold talking to the man in black, and she says, "Your construction company did such a good job on my office building. I'm going to hire one of your employees to build my new house." He says, "Well, thank you. Our company has a reputation for quality work." The fellow in green is thinking, "Oh, I hope she doesn't pick that guy in the back." You see that fellow in blue kind of standing to the back there. He's lazy and never does anything. Just because the entire construction company was responsible for the good job of the office building, that doesn't mean that every single employee is up to the same standard. And she may get disappointed if she picks the wrong person to build her house. And because those two are very easy to confuse, we put that in a little chart. So let's take a look at that. Composition focuses on or makes an assumption about the whole, right? The whole based on the parts. Division focuses on or makes an assumption about the parts, right? Focusing on the parts based on what you know about the whole. So both composition and division clearly belong to the fallacies of presumption. All right, they're assuming some things, just built right in to the argument, when really that might be the very thing that needs to be proven. They simply go from one direction to the other, from the whole to the parts or the parts to the whole. And you want to be very careful not to make those fallacies yourself, and you want to be alert to catching those fallacies in the writings or maybe even the speaking of other people.